And welcome in, everybody, downtown Nashville at Ryman Auditorium, right in the middle of a 3-night stand at the Mother Church of Country Music, celebrating the release of the fourth studio album from this group, the Tedeschi Trucks Band. We welcome in Derek Trucks. How are you, man?
Good, man. Good to be back.
Yeah, good to see you here. You guys have played Ryman a number of times, many of which, the last few years especially, multiple night stands. But this, on the front end of celebrating the fourth studio release, how special is this for you guys?
I mean, you know, this place is starting to feel like a home to us, and we start noticing a lot of friends and family fly in for these shows. So it's intense, but we love it, you know, and it's obviously a special place. And you know, the band, you always play differently when you're on a stage like that. And yeah, and having a new record is exciting. Having new material to dig into. As soon as it's out, I think we'll start playing everything. But we're dipping into it a little bit already.
Put this out in partnership with Fantasy Records and Concord. It's going to be a fun one to hear here in the Mother Church of Country Music. We've heard a little bit. I think one song was released a little bit earlier today. We've already heard Hard Case.
Yeah.
Tell me about some of the songs and kind of the theme behind this new record.
You know, it was, we went into the studio. It was the middle of a long, difficult year for the band. And but everybody's head was in the right place, and you end up writing in that space. And I think sometimes your best stuff comes out of turmoil. So I'm really proud of the record. I think it's going to hold up. It feels incredibly honest to me, which is I think is kind of all you're looking for these days.
Yeah.
So I'm excited, and some of the material is an awful lot of fun to play too. So you know, with this band, anytime we write new things and get to dig into new things, it feels like the whole set is better for it. This band kind of thrives on pushing it and just new things to dig your teeth into.
You're able to record your records at your home studio, so I'm sure that's got to make it extra special. One, to be able to get that intimacy and that comfort level of putting together your own record. You have been a part of the producing efforts of a lot of your work, but you also dive into doing a lot of it on analog tape, which has got to be something that's fun for you too. So it's mixing a little bit of both worlds.
It is, and I feel like every time we record a record in that studio, we get a little closer to what we're after. You know, we get a little closer to that sound that you're always searching for. And it, you know, being able to continue to work in one spot like that is pretty rare and pretty unique. So, you know, every time we make a record, we just feed the studio with, you know, some new old gear or whatever. Mm-hmm. The studio always benefits when we make a record. So I feel like every time we get in there, the sound is a little purer, and definitely going to analog tape this time made quite a difference. The way you record it changes. You know, it focuses everything a little bit differently. When you don't have unlimited tracks, everybody steps up, and you have to really commit, and you have to commit to sounds. And we're a 12-piece band, so when you're dealing with 24 tracks, you have to the drums can't take up 14 of the tracks.
Yeah.
So you have to really commit to a sound, and I think it's I think that makes everybody play, and I think it makes engineer producing. I think it makes the whole thing a little bit more serious in a good way.
The type of jam band style you guys do, I mean, it's impossible to really go in there and do overdubs. So I'm sure the majority of it is kind of all together within a live setting, right?
Most of it's live. Most of any of the soloing and things on the record are, you know, just airing it out. You know, the overdubs are usually vocals, background vocals, and horns, strings as well. It's hard to record strings with a rock band in the room.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I love the process of making records, and it's just a different side of the band, and you get to express things that you can't necessarily do live. You can't get that quiet and that intimate with a few thousand people in the room. So it's nice to be able to dig in and you know, capture Susan's voice that way too. I really enjoy doing that.
And diving into this new album called Signs, like you said, the last few years have been pretty tough. You know, there's a lot that's happened. So I'm sure that a lot of this music that's coming out on this record is pretty personal. The lyrics driving more towards the people that you've experienced life with.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in your sense, having that come out in the instrumentation, in the guitar playing, in the musicianship, you're able to tell that story in the guitar, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, and I think you a lot of the lessons you learn from people, when they go, the lessons don't go away. So in some way it kind of reinforces, or you double down on those lessons. You think about things that you learn from your mentors, and it takes on a different weight and a different meaning when they're not carrying that torch. So I think in some ways it, if you're part of carrying on those legacies in any way, I mean, it can be daunting if you let it, but it's a pretty amazing task if you face it that way. So it makes us, I don't know, it just makes the work feel just more meaningful in some ways, and that goes for touring and everything else. You realize there's not a lot of people doing it that way, and there's not a lot of people carrying on some of those lessons. So it becomes an important job.
Do you find ways in this album to pay tribute to a lot of those folks?
Oh yeah, I mean you do it, in the way you approach the work. You do it through the lyrics. You do it through. There's some just out and out tributes on this record to people. So, but yeah, I mean, you think about those things all the time. Your first influences and your mentors are kind of always there with you, and I think in the beginning when you're younger, you try to run away from those things, and you try to you rebel against it in a way. But the more comfortable you get in your skin, you realize that your roots are your roots, and you start honoring those things a little differently. So I feel like the band is kind of in that place now too.
When you were younger, did you know that a lot of those people were your heroes until you met them, or did you already have them as your hero in your mind before you met them?
It was a little bit of both. I mean, growing up with the Fillmore East and Eat a Peach, those Allman Brothers records spinning in the house, and that was the first music that really struck me. So, I mean, my uncle being in the band, there was that connection, but I wasn't around it very much. So the first time I saw them, it was in that scene. They were definitely on a pedestal. Someone like Colonel Bruce Hampton, when I met him, I didn't know anything about him, but he's one of those people that if you knew him, he changed your outlook on things going forward. So he's somebody that you just he grows into being a living hero.
Talk about a performer too.
Yeah, he taught a lot of people a lot of lessons. He you can almost tell a musician that went through Colonel's school or not. You could tell if somebody knew him or not, and he was really great at taking talented musicians and kind of destroying their egos and then building them back up, and they were always better for it. He would help you put things in perspective, because you see a lot of great artists, young, old, whatever, and you can see it get away from them. You can see they start taking themselves a little too seriously, and his thing was always take the work seriously, but you can't take yourself seriously. You're not curing cancer here. You're not you're not an ER doctor or nurse. He's like you're playing music. You have to put these things in perspective. But Colonel's somebody we think about all the time. I mean, Susan knew the Colonel before me and Susan met. I met him when I was 11. Our drummer Tyler Greenwell was in his band for years. My younger brother played with him, so he was very much family. So yeah, a lot of this record was kind of thinking about him.
Yeah. I mean, so many people were up on stage at that particular moment. Yeah. But that had to be something for everyone to experience as a family, really.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's intense. You never imagine being in a situation like that and seeing somebody at one of their happiest moments in their life, and then it just the highs and lows that night were as extreme as I've ever felt or witnessed. So, there's a beauty to being surrounded by everybody you love, and everybody there revering you, and you going out that way. But it's also a incredibly tragic thing. But I think it can be both.
Right.
I think it is both. So
yeah, I'm sure that it's incredibly cathartic. Something about this record that you guys have gone into the studio really thinking about the lyrics and the musicianship and the craft.
You have to face those things at some point. But in saying that, like the tune we wrote for the Colonel, I don't think we'll ever play it again. I don't ever want to go back there fully.
Yeah.
But when the time was right, it needed to be done. And I didn't know if we would ever release it. I didn't know what would become of it. But when we started putting the record together, it just felt right, kind of ending the record that way. And he's somebody people should think about. So you do what you can.
Did you approach this record with a bunch of different songs in mind and try to fit the ones that would work well the most, and kind of some that were set aside for other projects? Or
Yeah, I mean, you go in and you just write and
Yeah.
you compile tunes, and there was probably 16 or 17 tunes that we recorded, and you get them all across the finish line. You don't leave anything behind, and then, but when you get a few weeks into it, you start knowing which ones are rising up and which ones you want to hear over and over again, and which ones kind of don't fit the bill. And sometimes there's songs you really love that just don't make the cut. Maybe there's another song that occupies a similar space, and there's just no way to sequence it and make it feel right. So there was a few songs on the record that I really felt like it could have been there, but you don't want to shoehorn it in,
Yeah.
you know. But one of the great things about making records with Jim Scott is he puts these playlists together when you get 3-4 days into making a record, and everybody goes upstairs. We have a listening room above our studio, and we all listen down to everything we've done up to that point. And you start working on a sequence as you go, and certain tunes, and you can just feel in the room when a certain tune goes by and the band is stressed about it. You're like, that, I don't think we hit it. I think we go back and work on that. And the ones that feel great always feel great. So it's a nice communal thing that Jim does. He does that at his studio when he's making records. You do a lot of listening together, and the good things become obvious, and the things that maybe don't quite fit, they become obvious too. So
Whenever you co-produce a record like this, what involvement do you have in it? Is it song selection? Is it writing? Is it kind of instrumentation? Or is it just everything as a whole, just kind of being there in the room?
It's all of it. You know, it's just obsessing about it for 8 months or 10 months, you know, from the moment that we start writing or you start thinking of putting a record together. You know, it's and Bobby Tees too, our engineer, he puts so much time and energy into it when we make a record. It's pretty extraordinary. I feel like he burns a candle at both ends until we're done. And but it's great. He lives a few doors down from our house and studio, so he's over there at all hours. It goes late. It starts early and
that's
goes
gotta be
late.
fun to have your own studio kind of in the backyard.
It's wonderful, man. We couldn't do it any other way. You know, I mean, we wouldn't be able to put this much time and energy into a record if we didn't have that studio. Just because, you know, we have families and we tour, and it's a busy band, and the only way to do that is to have it right there. You know, you can split your home time. You know, the kids are in school, so all day while they're in school, you can be out there working, and there's no guilt of being away.
Yeah.
So
You have some of your family help build the studio, right? Like
my brother, my dad was a roofer. He put the roof on the studio. My brother David built and manages the studio. He keeps that thing humming.
Yeah, that's great. So you say 8 to 10 months to create a project like this. Is everybody involved? Most of them live in Jacksonville, or are they coming in for portions?
And that's 8 or 10 months with a lot of touring in between. You know, we're not in the studio that long. But anytime we're off, me and Bobby are out there listening and thinking about things, and you know, you're constantly massaging it, and you know, just rewriting tunes, and having, you know, Mike Madison will come down for a few days and we'll write, and we'll be halfway through a record and just start writing more. And you know, some songs pop up right towards the finish line. I think They Don't Shine was one of the last things we thought about, and we were pretty much done with the record and took a stab at it. So you're not finished until you're done. So you keep going and you keep digging.
Do these songs sort of take a life of their own when you're up on stage?
They do. I mean, some of them end up steering closer towards the album version. Some tunes are fun just to keep short and sweet, but a lot of them we kind of crack wide open, and they become something entirely different. A tune like Shame on the record is relatively short, but when we play it live, it can go.
Yeah. Whenever I've heard the first few songs, I don't think I've ever heard you guys play a song within 2 to 3 minutes up on stage.
Yeah, it doesn't happen much. When it does, like, what did we even just play it? Yeah. So, but it is nice sometimes to get in and out. Don't overstay your welcome.
When you do these shows, these 2, 3, 4 night stands, you kind of mix and match some of the set lists, so folks who are coming to multiple shows kind of have a different experience each time?
Yeah, I mean, we try not to repeat very often. I mean, if you're doing 2 nights, you try not to repeat anything. When you get 3 or 4, there's some songs you want to hit a few times. And, you know, we have Gabe Dixon and Brandon Boone playing on this tour with us, and this is their first run. So, you know, a lot of the material is all of it's new to them. So you you don't have as many tunes to choose from, but they've learned 60 something tunes on this tour alone.
Yeah.
I think when we did the Chicago theater run, we did somewhere in the range of 55, 60 different tunes over the multiple shows. So it's a lot to chew on.
When you travel into Nashville, I know you're surrounded by vintage guitar shops. We've mentioned this when we were talking on the phone last. You stopped by any of them yet?
No, I can't go in those places.
Yeah.
We'd have to book more shows if I went into those places.
Yeah. How many guitars do you own in your collection?
You know, I didn't think I was a guitar collector until we put them all in one room, and I realized between me and Sue, we have quite a few guitars. I don't know the exact number, but I mean, I'm not like an active. I don't go out looking, but we've been on the road for 20 something years, and I guess you realize that you accumulate things.
I'm sure that you find the ones that speak to you in the moment too.
Totally, yeah. And some of them never get far away from you. You always play them. There's a few acoustic guitars that are always close, and the guitars you gig with. But some of them are fun to rediscover. But I remember when I first started dating Susan, we just moved in together, and I called her, found this vintage shop in Cincinnati, and had all these old amps. And I was like, I can't decide. There's like a deluxe Fender and a Pro and this. And she's like, get all three. I need one too. I was like, this is trouble.
That's
this
tough,
is not good.
Yeah.
I need somebody to like pull in the raids. So we have.
That's usually my wife on my end of the spectrum. Yeah, no, you're not getting that.
With anything else, she is, but with amps and guitars, she's all for it. Which, when we built the studio, I was glad we had them. So, because all those things come into play.
That can be a good but expensive hobby to start collecting items.
No, that was before we had children.
Yeah,
everything slows down.
Yeah. How many guitars do you bring on the road with you?
I bring 3 or 4. I don't bring many. I have a main SG and a backup, and then a guitar for alternate tunings and maybe an acoustic. So I don't travel with many. I generally play 1 or 2.
When it comes to recording, with it being your own studio, do you get into like being a gearhead within the studio as well? The types of recording equipment that you're using, or the types of gear? With
the recording gear and with microphones, quite a bit. With guitars and amps, I don't steer too far away. But depending on the tune, sometimes you hear something that you're after, and it's not the sound you're usually playing with, so you start digging. And there's some combinations that you'll use, and you only use it once on a track, but that's fun. That is fun, digging through the studio. There's a lot of weird old stuff in there. That's
a totally different dynamic than being on stage and playing the guitar. Is learning the art of recording and engineering and mixing.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people forget about that end and how sonically it can be different just by one click of a button. Or
I don't think I really enjoyed making records until me and Mike Madison made a record with Jay Joyce here in Nashville in his home studio, and that was the first time that I realized that it's just a totally different. It can be really exploratory, and it kind of cracked my head open to the songwriting process in the studio and the whole thing. So it was really doing that session here with my old band. But me and Mike went up there for pre-production and spent a lot of time at Jay's house, and that made me want to build a studio and start exploring that. And it's a blast. I mean, I really look forward to the time that we get in the studio to make a record.
You interested in like the recording side of it just as much as you are the performing side of it?
Oh yeah,
it's fun.
When we started rolling with analog tape, Jim Scott and Bobby Tees had me cutting tape and doing splices that way, and it's all hands on deck.
But you get that grease pencil in your hand, it changes the game.
You better not mess up.
Yeah. Lose a whole solo, man. The wrong cut.
Lose a whole track.
Yeah.
I remember doing one session with, I think it was Greg Allman and Warren and O'Teal, and we were up in New York, and we recorded a track for one of Warren's records, and the engineer, after we were done for the day, they wiped the tape by accident. The track was gone, man, and it was... you
get those things too close to a magnet.
It was some long faces in the room.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful when you're dealing in that domain.
Yeah. A similar thing could happen if you're recording digitally. The hard drive crashes.
That's true. That's true. You're always backing up. Always back up.
Yeah. Backing up your backup.
That's right.
Yeah. So when it comes to performing, I mean, people have known you performing up on stage with so many people since you were such a young age. Do you still learn things about yourself when you play guitar? Still learn new tricks?
Oh, yeah. No, every night. I mean, you get off stage and there's 10 things that you should probably think about or do a little differently or a little better. Or, I think of it like think of athletes sometimes. It's like it doesn't matter how far down the road you get, you still have to work at it and perfect it. You never get there. Mm-hmm. And the people that think they do, you can hear it, because then they're always drifting backwards at that point once you think you got it. But every night especially when you're improvising with people, you have to be on your toes, and you really have to listen, and you have to if you get too arrogant, you stop listening to people, and you stop that communication, and it gets ugly. So you really have to be on your toes. I think that's what keeps a lot of musicians young and keeps them going. When you see guys playing until their 80s and 90s and still doing it, it's because it's a living, breathing thing. Mm-hmm. You can't ever really rest on it.
And like you're saying, when you're up on stage with a full band, the dynamic changes if any one person is out, and that changes and influences how you perform too.
Absolutely, and everyone's attitude from night to night changes, and the energy in the room and the crowd and what the stage sounds like. I mean, even these multi-night runs, we'll play. We'll do 6-7 nights at the Beacon, or you'll do 3 at the Ryman, and every night sounds different for some reason. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's the power in the room, or if it's the different size and shape people showing up that night. Like, it really changes the sound. And with a 12-piece band, you can feel it, when the low end shifts, or you have to kind of reimagine the way you go about it. So
when it comes to a place like Ryman Auditorium, what type of energy do you feel on that stage versus some of the others that you've performed?
I mean, you feel it at the Ryman, one, because a good amount of people that have played on the stage, and maybe you've been out in the audience. I think I saw Peter Rowan and Tony Rice here, and there's a reverence for the room and the stage, and but you can feel it in the audience too when you just look out, and you can tell the people that are in there for the first time, and just the look in their eye, and looking and seeing the glass in the back. I mean, it's you always talk about a great show feeling like you're at church, but when you're actually in a church, it's another thing. So
this is the congregation.
It
right
is,
here.
man, and just the way it's laid out, it's totally different than any venue you play. So there's a handful of rooms for us that just feel different than the rest, and this is on the short list for sure.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to just performing in this venue, actually, let me just go back to, what was your first show you ever saw here?
I think it was Tony Rice, Peter Rowan, and me and Todd Smalley, our old bass player, came on a day off. I think we were probably playing the Ace of Clubs up the street.
Yeah.
But it was great because I'd never seen Tony Rice at all, so it was I was thrilled about the whole thing. But it's not a place at that point I ever imagined we would play. It seemed like an acoustic room, and we're a big old loud band, but the beauty of a band like ours is it can be incredibly dynamic. It can get really quiet when it needs to, and those are the moments in a room like this that I think it really shines. When everything breaks down and is kind of simmering, you can really fill the room without overfilling it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you can absolutely hear the acoustics. A guitar strum, you can hear it from the back row.
No,
it's amazing.
It's a special sound.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to hear you guys perform tonight.
Cool, man.
Excited for the new record. It's called Signs. It's out February 15. Derek Trucks with the Tedeschi Trucks Band.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for coming by.
All right. Good to see you.